champagne stinks when it's on clothing. Zak was covered in it and absolutely stunk. I love champagne. That's one of the things I've learned most this weekend, that champagne, when you're wearing it, who knew how much Zak smelled awful, by his own admission.
Or just Monaco smells. We've gone back to what I was predicting.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Fast and the Curious. My name is Christian Hugill. This is the Formula One podcast that previews and debriefs Grand Prix. This is the strangest place I've ever recorded a podcast. So Betty Glover usually presents the podcast. She's stuck in an airport in Germany waiting to collect delayed baggage, so she can't be here. Greg James presents the Radio 1 Breakfast Show, therefore he's busy with Radio 1's big weekend in Liverpool, so he can't be here. So normally when I'm working at a Grand Prix, I talk to the guys back in the UK, but they're not around, and Betty's in Germany. So I've left work, walked up a hill where you leave the circuit to go to the train station, and in order to do a podcast, literally, as you'll see on YouTube, dived into a random side street where I had to find cover because it's about to rain. Fortunately, also leaving work is the Times Motorsport reporter Molly Hudson, who joined us on our preview show. Molly, you've effectively been our guest presenter for Monaco. We're very grateful you're here because we're dropping like flies this weekend.
And we both probably look about a year older than we were on Wednesday because I am all Monaco'd out, I think.
It feels so much. It feels a year ago since we were doing that podcast when I'd first just got to where I'm staying. We also will both look slightly battle-worn because we've walked up a massive hill. As I say, when you leave the circuit, you walk up a massive hill to the train station. We're about to go and get our train back to our respective hotels. But yeah, Molly, you're Monaco'd out and quite tired, but it's my first Monaco Grand Prix. I've loved it. Right, it's chaos. There's so many people. The train station's rammed, but it's so beautiful. So I've loved seeing it for the first time. And you're Monaco'd out because you're a bit tired, but for some nice things, right?
Yes, and I actually think we were saying earlier as we were doing our sort of team principal little debrief as we do, going along the paddock speaking to people. And we thought it was the busiest Monaco that we can remember. You know, it is a new level of crazy this year. There just seems to be more fans, more VIPs. It's one of those races where you think something takes 5 minutes and it just takes double as long just to walk anywhere because there's so many people everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's unique. It's fun. Have had a lot of fun. Did a bit of a hot lap with a certain 4-time world champion.
Talk about that later. Oh, yes.
So, a lot of good points, but quite tiring.
It's my first Monaco Grand Prix. I've absolutely loved it. As you've just seen, it's absolutely crazy, but it's so beautiful. And it's mad. And yes, the train station, you can't get anywhere. And there's so many people everywhere. Hence, we've ended up doing a podcast in a side street, and it all feels a bit chaotic. But listen, we're rolling with it. We had a good time. Now, the race itself, Lando Norris won the Grand Prix. Who was second? Charles Leclerc was second. Yes, he was second. He famously was second. And Oscar Piastri was third. Molly, it feels to me that this race was dominated by this new rule which said to everyone, you've got to stop twice. Just briefly explain why we got into this situation.
As it proved in the race today, it is more or less impossible to overtake around here. F1 cars, really wide. Monaco circuit, really narrow. Those two things, not the perfect marriage.
And we got a boring race last year because of that.
Exactly. And it meant that you could the tyre degradation is very low here, so you could just do a one stop and drive as slow as you wanted and get to the end, basically. So F1, the FIA, all the teams didn't want that to happen again, introduced this 2-stop strategy rule, and it did do a bit of improving it, I think.
Well, I was about to ask you, did it work? Now, I think I might be in the minority, but I absolutely loved it. I think, right, listen, Monaco is different, right? We know it's a unique test of the driver's skill and it's a bit of an endurance mission. We said this on the preview show. Would I want to do that every race weekend in Formula One? No, of course I wouldn't. Nobody would. But because Monaco's different, I couldn't take my eyes off it. I found it captivating, knowing, well, who's going to sort of delay each other next? You said to me earlier, Molly, the start, we didn't know what was going on. And you had unique situations like Williams saying, all right, we're going to get Carlos to hold everybody up so Alex can pit. And then that gave him a gap. Okay, in which case, now we're going to swap them round and we'll get Alex to hold up so Carlos can pit. RB did similar and got a double points finish. Would I want that every week? No. It's a bit Mario Kart, as Max said. It's a bit wacky races. It's silly, it's chaotic, but I actually enjoyed it. What did you think?
I didn't mind it. I would say of the people that we spoke to afterwards, they weren't, hugely a big fan of it. In a sense of, they said, we still couldn't overtake, so it didn't really fix the underlying issue. But on the other hand, it was a bit better. I think it worked to a point. That's what I would say. Worked to a point. The start worked. The middle sort of worked when Racing Bulls and Williams were having their fun and delaying everyone, and George Russell was losing the plot, stuck behind a Williams that was moving about as slow as a tractor. But at the end, by sort of 3/4 of the way through, we were sort of back to a Monaco procession, because certainly for the cars at the front, you knew what was going to happen. The only slight jeopardy was Max Verstappen and Red Bull. They'd made the gamble, let's stay out on these old tyres, just in case there's a red flag, safety car, whatever, we can get a free pit stop, and they would have won the race. But realistically, didn't happen. The Monaco gamble didn't pay off. He dropped down to 4th, and everyone sort of landed where they'd qualified. Yeah,
and you're right, there was that fun where we mentioned the Williams earlier. So George Russell went, I'm going to go, Alex is going so slowly, I'm going to go over the curb and overtake him. Oh no, I'll take the penalty, thinking he'd get a 5-second penalty. The FIA go, nice try, pal. I'll give you a drive-through penalty. Actually, if he hadn't have done that, he might have got a point.
Yeah, I think it just summed up the frustration. If anyone has ever been in a road car and you're stuck behind a really slow car,
someone doing 20 and a 50,
and it's driving you absolutely insane. Well, that was just George Russell for half of this race, and he just went, word the FIA would find me for saying.
Yeah, can't say that.
Can't say that one.
Even though we've left.
Probably just speaking
still
about
find
it,
us.
Still find me. But he just thought, I can't do this any longer. I need to get out. I need to do something different. And he did it. And that was quite fun, wasn't it? We don't get that very often. And he was like, you know what? I actually got to push this car to its maximum around Monaco. And that's really cool.
Listen, I think Monaco should be on the calendar. Yes, you don't get overtaking, but it's different. It's one race out of 24 where it's practically an endurance race, where it's not hitting the walls, where qualifying tests you. It's a different sporting test. And this was another element of that. Would I want it every week? Absolutely not. I know the drivers didn't want it. I quite liked it. I entirely understand your viewpoint. If you didn't, of course I do. I entirely get there'll be people out there who didn't like that. So listen, fair enough. But regardless of whether it works or not, and whether it comes back, and whether it comes back for next year with some tweaks, it did work. Williams, by delaying, as we've just said, by basically backing everyone up, managed to get double points, as did RB. They played it perfectly.
And they were almost the first team to do it. I'm sure it was something that a lot of teams had thought about, looked at. I know Mercedes had before qualifying, and then they qualified too close together, and, best laid plans all fell apart. But I think what was cool about Racing Bulls is that for both those drivers, you've essentially got two rookies. I know Liam Lawson's are we calling him half a rookie?
Well, I interviewed Laurent Mekies after the race and said, Isaac for his rookie season. And he went, yeah, don't forget Liam's a rookie too. And I felt like going, yeah, well, all right, fine. Let's not go down that debate again. We'd be here all night.
1.5 rookies got their best ever finishes in Formula One today. And that is very cool. And if you're them, you absolutely love this and you want to do it every week.
Listen, Liam Lawson has driven his best weekend for RB by a mile. He's looked far more comfortable in the car. He's looked far closer to his teammates' pace. Really encouraging for him. And Isaac Hadjar continues to impress me. A relatively speaking incident-free weekend. Yes, he did brush up some walls in practice. But listen, when it counted, he really put the performance in today. He's really impressive. His best place finish in Formula One with 6th. So yeah, RB nailed the strategy. Williams, I think, actually had the pace to do a bit better in qualifying, so they won't come away feeling they've aced it. But listen, they've got a double points finish. For Williams, that's not bad at all. But let's talk about the guys at the top. Firstly, Lando Norris, the pressure's been on him recently, Molly. He, all weekend, to me, I watched every minute of the practice sessions, looked more comfortable in this car all weekend than Oscar Piastri. Qualifying's been his weakness recently. He aced that, and he did all he could in the race. I thought it was really impressive from Lando this weekend. What did you think?
Yeah, in our papers huddle that we do with Lando every Thursday, I was saying to him, if there was ever a time to slay these qualifying demons, this wouldn't half be a good weekend to do it, knowing how important qualifying is around here. And he sort of said, yeah, be quite nice, wouldn't it? And that's exactly what he did. And I think what was so impressive is he's always been struggling this season, apart from maybe Australia, to push at that final little limit. And here, if you get that wrong, you're in a wall. Your sort of weekend's basically over because it's so hard to come through the pack. So the amount of pressure he must have been feeling in that moment. And then, on top of all of that, every other pole sitter at Monaco has a really good night's sleep on the Saturday night because they know that they can just sort of stroll around.
Yeah, not this weekend, though.
He didn't. He had all of this strategy, thought process, the conversations all the drivers were having with their engineers today was like insane. They were all like, should I be pushing? Should I be doing this? They're thinking about creating gaps. They're thinking where everyone else is on the track, about this far from the wall. It's a lot going on in there in that helmet, and he did it perfectly. And for me, that's the most impressive drive I've seen from Lando in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably, now you said that, it's arguably his most impressive weekend in Formula One in many ways, because to do that round Monaco, I always thought Abu Dhabi last season, where he just looked so dominant all weekend, that really impressed me. But this is another one. He's looked so comfortable in a car that is difficult to control all weekend. It's like he'd done a reset. He put his qualifying demons to bed. I was really impressed with him. I was also impressed. I was sort of impressed in a way. I spoke to the drivers after free practice 2, or most of them. And Lando seemed a bit grumpy, frankly. But he was just, I don't think he was grumpy. He was just like, all right, today's gone well, but it doesn't matter. He was so focused on what was next. I thought it was really interesting. Lando's put himself back in championship contention this weekend. He's 3 points, is it, Molly? Yeah, 3 points off Oscar. The dream weekend for Lando Norris. He's done really, really, really well. And listen, just one more thing on that, on the sort of, two-stop thing. It did bunch them up towards the end. And we did have that point where, Charles, Max, Lando were so close to each other. That was tense. And that is a moment where Lando could have made a mistake on another day.
Exactly. And I think that is what has been so impressive with him. I spoke to Andrea Stella before we left the circuit, and he was basically saying Lando was cold-blooded. That's what it was like, so calm, so cool, didn't panic, everything was going on, and it just didn't affect him. And I think even they were impressed with that, and they know all about Lando's capabilities. So yeah, I think it was a big weekend for Lando, and also we always talk about this word momentum, don't we, when it comes to these sort of races. It's such a long season, the twists and the turns of the title race. But it feels like where Oscar was very serenely swanning along, nothing was really going right for Lando. The only time anyone beat Oscar was sort of Max. Now Lando is really right back in there. And I think that is super exciting for all of us, for you, the listeners, everyone else, to have a proper title race.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more. Lando's 5th Grand Prix win, McLaren's first Monaco win since 2008 with Lewis Hamilton. Really, really impressive from Lando this weekend. Now, I got a last-minute call-up to do some F1 TV interviews after the race, and went in the pit lane, spoke to Zak Brown. Champagne stinks when it's on clothing. Zak was covered in it and absolutely stunk. I love champagne. That's one of the things I've learned most this weekend, that champagne, when you're wearing it, who knew how much Zak smelled awful, by his own admission.
Or just Monaco smells. We've gone back to what I was predicting.
We'll come back to that. Zak smelled awful, but I said to Zak, listen, despite it not being Oscar's best weekend, he still came 3rd. That's a sign of how much he's improved. And Zak said to me, I think Oscar's had a great weekend. Now, listen, I don't necessarily agree with Zak. Oscar didn't look comfortable at any point in practice. He lost his nose cone at one point. He's not looked on Lando's pace at all this weekend. But that's rare, right, Molly? We've not seen weekends like this from Oscar very much. and he still came third. So I think if in this championship fight, if on a bad weekend you still come in third, you're putting yourself in a pretty good place. Do you see what I mean?
Exactly, and I think Oscar's probably been chasing it a little bit all weekend because, as you say, he had those crashes really with the walls in practice, and he doesn't really make those sort of mistakes. And this is really one of those circuits where, because it is so tricky, it's so technical, you have to build up. And I think his build was sort of going like this, whereas Lando was quite smooth going up. So yeah, I think it has been a tough weekend for Oscar. Obviously, last weekend, also tough in an entirely different way, in the fact that he sort of lost out in that wheel-to-wheel battle with Max Verstappen.
Sure.
So I think this has been a real sort of, everything can't always go well in a 24 race season. You're never going to win every race. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. I think Oscar will have learned a lot from these last couple of races.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And we mustn't forget with Oscar, he's got lots fewer years on Lando with the experience, and he's still learning. And as I say, the fact that I'm calling it not a great weekend and his boss Zak's going, look, it was still a good weekend for him, I think that says a lot. So I'm expecting Oscar to bounce back in Spain. I'm expecting it to be really close between those two in Spain, and a good weekend for McLaren overall, I think. I mean, they're going to win the Constructors' title, aren't they? Anyway, it looks highly likely, but another good weekend for McLaren. Right, we'll pick up some other talking points from the Monaco Grand Prix in just a moment. Welcome back to the Fast and the Curious. Let's talk about Ferrari, Molly, because Charles Leclerc came into this weekend saying it's going to be a disaster. It is going to be awful. We'll be lucky if we get the car to move at all. It's the world's slowest machine. We might as well be driving a shopping trolley. Some of these quotes I've made up, but he wasn't far off. And actually, all right, maybe Ferrari turned their engine up a bit to really give it some in Monaco. That's some rumours we've been hearing. But regardless, Lewis got a bit unlucky with his grid penalty, obviously. But Charles P2, that's surely as good as Ferrari could have hoped for this weekend, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think, as you've just said, it's sort of how Charles feels now. He feels a bit annoyed that he didn't win because it was so close in qualifying, and that would have probably got him the win if he had been the one on pole. But then he's sort of saying to himself, actually, about 4 days ago, I was thinking this was going to be a disaster, might not even get top 10, and I'm sat here second. So he's sort of disappointed, but he's also happy. And I think what is more interesting is why exactly Ferrari were good here. As you say, was it to do with the engine? Is it something in their car that does work well at slow speed circuits? Because if it is, there's some more at the back end of the calendar. We know they've always historically been good on street circuits. We just thought that they wouldn't be this time, and they thought they wouldn't be this time. So it's all quite interesting and shows just how tight the margins are. That even when we're talking about Ferrari, who have had a pretty poor season, now they're second.
Yeah, I agree. And it is close up there. I still think, the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari can win races this season. It is close up there. Right, what else should we talk about? Oh, I'll tell you what I wanted to talk about, Molly. I want to talk about Haas as well. Just while we've already mentioned, this is the bit of the post-debrief podcast we usually call Christian's Cubbyhole. So this is the bit where, I don't know how we came up with that name. It was something someone said once, but basically...
Well, we could have been in a cubbyhole right now. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
I mean, yeah, we'd take it under this random arch somewhere. Although we did this because it was going to rain. It hasn't rained yet. But anyway... So in my cubbyhole this week, the people that have sort of gone unnoticed were Haas, because in free practice, they looked rubbish. They looked a mile off it pace-wise. They looked like they were really struggling. I spoke to Esteban after free practice too. He's very lovely and smiley, as he always is. But he was like, yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. The fact that they got in the points for Esteban Ocon, they'd have been delighted with that. Another team that just nailed the strategy on this sort of bizarre two-stop outlier of a race. So well done to Haas and Esteban Ocon. They're going in my cubbyhole. Were you impressed with them today?
I was. They've just had a really sort of strange weekend because Ollie Behrman got that 10-place grid penalty.
Which was harsh in my view.
Harsh. But that basically ruined his weekend.
Yeah.
He sacrificed qualifying because he knew that the best thing to do was basically finish dead last and throw the kitchen sink at it today, which they did. When did he finish in the end? 12?
I honestly can't remember.
So he didn't make the points, so it wasn't the best. But for Esteban, he just really put it together, and I think driving around this circuit, you know when you've put a good lap together. And yesterday, Esteban was so happy with his lap. He was like, touch the wall on the entry, touch the wall on the apex, touch the wall on the exit. Could not have given a single bit more than I did, and absolutely maximise the car. And that's all you can do. You know, if you've got a car that's not capable of winning races,
Yes.
for these drivers, all they want to do is maximise everything they can.
Like a flannel, squeeze every bit out of it.
Every last bit. And that's exactly what Esteban did.
You just mentioned the thing to the wall. One of my favourite things this weekend is F1 getting carried away with their too close to the wall graphic. So there was the point where, like, I can't remember which one it was.
Someone smacked it. Yes,
Someone-
too close.
Yeah, someone smashes it into the wall, and then a big banner comes on the screen and goes, too close to the wall. Do you think? I hadn't noticed. Oh, that was fun. If you're new to Formula One, driving into the wall is considered suboptimal. So thank you for F1's graphics there. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Speaking of which, now we usually do Betty's radio radar, and Betty was supposed to be on the call. So Betty has sent me her radio radar. These are the bits of team radio that we particularly enjoy. Again, this just sort of accidentally happened. Fernando Alonso getting very cross at one stage in the first third of the race. I can't push now. Really made me chuckle. He was unlucky though today. Oh, if it wasn't for breaking down, he'd have had his first points of the season.
You know, he said last week, I'm the unluckiest driver in the world.
He is.
He might actually have spoken that into existence. Now he might actually be.
Some enjoyably specific statistics from Max Verstappen. My shifts feel like I'm in the Monaco Grand Prix 1972. So by 1973, it was much better than Max had obviously found today. It was better than it was in 1970, though. You know, it could have been worse. That was fantastic. I mean, why 1972?
Well, at times, these drivers were going so slow, they probably had quite a lot of time to think about things to say, actually.
It's around 72.
Yeah.
Crofty couldn't wait to say who won the 1972 Grand Prix in commentary. Couldn't wait. Crofty's on next week, by the way. We've got some Crofty time coming up, so he'll have enjoyed that. There's an excuse for a niche stat. Crofty loved it. And we had a break from it in Imola, but Sassy Hamilton, you're not answering the question at one point. That race engineer relationship still doesn't seem right to me.
It was a bit weird because we asked Fred Vasseur about this, and he sort of said they'd agreed before the race that at certain parts of the track they wouldn't talk. So, for example, once they were in the tunnel, they decided not to talk because obviously quite dangerous driving
going on
here. Yeah. But I don't really think that explained what on earth was going on with their radio. I think there was still sort of like teething issues, should we say, to put it politely.
Well,
with that.
we're a third of the way into the season. It's full-on dental issues now. It's not teething. We're in need of a proper trip to the adult dentist. Let's keep an eye on that one.
I can't believe on this list of radio there isn't George Russell. I prefer not to speak. He went full Jose Mourinho.
He must have known he was doing Mourinho. I prefer, for those who aren't football fans, this is a famous quote from Jose Mourinho. He must have known that.
He must have. He's just thought, oh, unbelievable.
And there you go, Molly, bringing your own radio radar is a sign that you have. And by the way, we had so many nice messages about your appearance last week. So I meant to read some out, but it all got a bit chaotic. So if you commented on the YouTube or send us a DM, Molly, people loved you. They wanted to find out, we said on the preview show, Molly was going to be doing a hot lap with Max Verstappen. You can read about her experience in the Times and on the website, the Times site. That must have been ludicrous. Talk us through it.
It was incredible, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. When we spoke on that sort of Wednesday evening, I wasn't sure what to expect. But doing it here, I think, was so special. It was the first time I didn't realise, until I got there, asked what speed we were going to go, and they said, not sure, we've never done hot laps here.
Good, cheers, lovely.
That settled the nerves.
I bet.
Not. I was in a Ford Mustang Dark Horse, 104 mile an hour by the first corner.
Insane.
And it was just so much fun. But what I think was almost as much fun was being in Max Verstappen's world. And that's the way I introed the piece for the Times. But so often they're in our world. They're in press conferences, they're in the pen, don't really want to speak to us, let's be honest. But in that environment, he's just so much more relaxed because he's at the wheel of a car doing what he loves.
Yeah, I'm quite fortunate. I've had a bit of time with Max like that and once or twice. He's been on this podcast, which is obviously a very different setting to the normal media interviews you do. He's a nice man, Max Verstappen. He's a nice man. He gets a bad rap. We all know how he can be off track, of course, but he's a nice man. And that's got to be an experience you'll remember for a long, long time.
It was so cool, and I think so at the second lap, and I write about it in the piece, but I had the opportunity to either get out of the car and do a little interview with him, or to do another lap.
Another lap, sod it, another lap.
So obviously, I chose to do a second lap, and he just pushed it a little bit further, touched the curbs, went close to the wall, and you could feel it. Like, I've never experienced that feeling of speed. You don't need to look at the speedo to know you're really pushing the edge, pushing the limit. You can actually feel it in the car. And that was just an incredible thing to experience. And also, there were fans in the stands watching this. They were watching me in a car.
Incredible. Oh, Molly, I love it.
What's going on?
I absolutely love it. Listen, go and read Molly's piece in the Times. There's a lovely read on it. It's absolutely brilliant. Right. Now, we brought up two things in the previous show because you'd obviously been here before and I hadn't. So many people messaged me because Molly said that certain parts of Monaco smell and it slightly ruins it. And lots of people are DM me and be like, Christian, you've got to tell us if Molly's right, if it does smell. There are parts of it that do smell. It is, not all of it. Certainly not all of it. It doesn't smell in the paddock. It does smell sort of on the entrance to the media centre. But I think you're right. It's one of those nice seaside areas where, and what do they do by the seaside? They pump sewage in. Monaco is so beautiful. I've had such an amazing weekend. I've had so many nice messages from people saying, you've got the best job in the world. I'm fully aware how lucky I am. Been a Formula One fan since I was 10. I felt so special being here. And it is so beautiful. It like the hills and like the buildings. It is gorgeous. It is amazing. And then sometimes you're sort of soaking in all this view and then going, God, it bloody smells of egg, doesn't it? So yeah, it does smell a bit, doesn't it, somewhere?
It does. And the funniest thing is that part of the circuit that you're describing near the media centre is the bit the drivers have to walk through to get to the press conference. So if you see any pictures of drivers looking a bit disgusted, they're probably not unhappy. They're just smelling this particular bit of circuit and they don't like it.
We say we take you inside the world of Formula One on this podcast. Boy, do we just. And the final question, somebody DM'd us asking this, is what are the public toilets like in Monaco? I've seen a mixed bag. I've walked past several public toilets, which obviously people can use as portaloos. There are in plentiful supply. A couple of times I nipped in cafes and didn't have a queue. Sometimes I did have a queue. My review of the Monaco public toilet situation is a mixed bag. Molly, I guess you've probably been out and about a bit less than me because you've been in the media centre, right?
Yes. I don't think I've used a Monaco public toilet.
We've got an actual journalist on the podcast from the Times, one of the most reputable newspapers in the world, and I'm asking for an analysis on the public toilets. And it's your fault, listeners, asking this. I'll take this mixed bag.
But then I did find a cockroach type thing in my bathroom. So I feel like
You did.
I have done a bit of suffering. I haven't just, been on yachts and had a nice time.
Molly, it is 9:15 in the evening here. I mean, I've been at work since 7 o'clock this morning. You've been a similarly long day. So for taking the time to do this, when basically getting the Fast and the Curious out of a huge logistical hole this weekend with all three presenters being out of the country, thank you. Our listeners have loved you, and genuinely they really have. So thank you for doing it, Molly. We hope you'll come back on again because our gang have loved you, and we really appreciate you doing it because we've delayed you getting back to your cockroach-infested hotel room by at least 45 minutes here.
I can't. You've really sold that to me. I just can't wait to leave now.
Yeah, sure. Molly, we'll continue our walk up the hill to the train station. The Fast and the Curious will be back in the week to preview the Spanish Grand Prix. We hopefully got a cool guest. We need to do a bit of logistics. Not a driver, a celebrity Formula One fan. That's TBC. So leave that with us. We're hoping to do that in the week previewing the Spanish Grand Prix. And then Mr. David Croft is joining us to debrief the Spanish Grand Prix next week because I'm on holiday. So Crofty's filling in. It's not bad filling, is it?
And that's really cool because I just did a in the comms box with Crofty in Saudi Arabia,
Oh, it's a great piece.
and it's amazing. He's amazing.
Oh, Crofty's honestly a delightful, enthusiastic ball of warmth and energy. We love David Croft on this podcast. So yeah, Crofty on next week, and you can read Molly's piece about. It's fascinating, and our geeky lot will love it about what's life's like in the commentary box. So go and read that with Crofty. He's on next week. We're back in the week. This has been the Fast and the Curious, and we'll speak to you before the Spanish Grand Prix. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Bye bye for now.